Hey there, beer aficionados. Welcome to our brand new episode of Why This Beer, the podcast where we crack open a cold one and dive into the fascinating world of craft brewing. I'm your host, Darren Binema from Neighborhood Brewing, and as always, I'm joined by the beer maestro himself, Aslan from Main Street Brewing. How's it going, Aslan?
Hey, cheers everyone. I'm thrilled to be here, ready to share the positive vibes and brew to full stories from the heart of BC beer scene.
Absolutely, Aslan. Today we've got a special treat lined up for you. We're kicking off our brewery tour right here in beautiful British Columbia, talking to some fantastic brewers who make this place a craft beer paradise. Our goal, to have a blast, learn a thing or two, and spread the love for our local BC beer.
That's right, Darren. We're all about having fun, soaking in the wisdom from our fellow industry mates, and of course, promoting the incredible craft beer community we've got right at our doorstep. And hey, we know times can be rough, but there's nothing like positive vibes and a good beer can bring, right?
Absolutely, Aslan. In each episode, we'll be chatting with brewers about their all-time favorite core beers, the ones that make them smile with every sip. But it's not just about the beer. We're digging into the heart of what they love about brewing and what's got them buzzing with excitement these days.
And here's the kicker, folks. We're not stopping at our beautiful province. While we'll start by showcasing the incredible talent right here in BC, we'll also be exploring the broader beer landscape from other provinces, possibly crossing the border into the States. We're taking Why This Beer on a cross-country and international adventure.
And it doesn't end there. In addition to our interview-based episodes, we'll be diving deep into the intricacies of the craft beer world with topic-based discussions from the art of brewing to the latest trends and everything in between. We're on a mission to unravel the mysteries behind Why This Beer.
So, grab your favorite pint, pull up a chair, and join us on this epic beer journey. Whether you're a seasoned brewmaster or just getting in the craft beer scene, Why This Beer is the place to be. Cheers to positive vibes, great brews, and the love of great beer. Yeah, there we are. And
That was beautiful.
today we've got Julia Hanlon from Steamworks Brewery.
Hello.
How's it going?
Great. I loved listening to that intro. That was awesome. now I know what it's all about.
Yeah.
Thank you for
That's
having
right.
me.
Yeah. Julia, you started 2005, started brewing at Molson.
Yeah.
Was that your first brewery job?
It was my first brewery job. I was straight out of university, and I did chemical engineering at UBC, and I did co-op throughout doing my degree, and it kind of made me realize like I actually didn't really want to do chemical engineering. 5 years in, but because like all the jobs I had done up to that point were like pretty heavy industry, like pulp and like natural resources, pulp and paper, mining, stuff like that. So, and I just was like, I don't know if I really like this, and I've always been kind of like obsessed with food, and at the appropriate age, also with beverages. And my part of my studies was biological engineering, which was a study of fermentation, which like primarily the study of fermentation, not really specifically related to beer in any way, but it actually is quite applicable.
Yeah.
And I started taking some food science classes in my kind of fourth year, and I was at that point, like I lived on the west side of Vancouver because I was going to UBC, living in a like crappy basement suite. And so we went by like Burrard Street, the brewery, Molson Brewery on Burrard Street, like all the time. And I was like, I want to work there. That looks like a
that
cool
seems like
job.
a fun place. Yeah.
You could see like the filler, or I didn't even know what it was at the time, but I now know it was a can filler.
Yeah.
Just like spinning and spinning and spinning. And it just looked so cool. And so I kind of set my sights on that and started, I don't know, I guess enthusiastically applying for any positions they had.
Yeah.
And eventually got hired. So yeah, that was my first brewery, and I stayed there for stayed with Molson for 10 years. I worked for two different breweries in Molson.
Wow. Cool.
Vancouver and Montreal.
Yeah. Full decade. Are you bilingual?
No. That was like the tough I mean, I don't know if it's the same for you guys, but I think my whole family is from BC, and well, my dad's from Winnipeg, but like I feel like I was indoctrinated into this like dislike. I was told I must dislike Toronto. So
Yeah.
when given the opportunity to go to another brewery, they wanted me to go to a larger brewery than Vancouver. So the choices were Toronto or Montreal.
Yeah.
And I just was like immediately like, no, I'm not going to Toronto. I'm going to go to Montreal. I'm going to go to work in a city that, I mean, the city is actually, you can function totally fine in English, but the brewery is operates in French. And
Oh, wow.
my like, you know, crappy high school French was what I kind of like survived on.
Yeah.
I got pretty good, I think, when I was there, but I just felt like stupid and embarrassed like pretty much most of the time because I knew my accent was so bad, and
Right.
it was just
a lot
so
of
in
hand talking.
Yeah, and in
Yeah.
hindsight, like when we were living in Montreal, we had friends in Toronto, so we'd like go visit Toronto, and I was like, actually, this place isn't so bad. It would have been a lot. It would have been a lot easier on me if I had gone to an English-speaking brewery. But yeah,
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So I heard your first love of beer was at the Cheese.
Oh my God. It's actually kind of funny you should bring that up because I haven't thought about the Cheese in a long time.
You want to fill people in on what the Cheese is?
So
Yeah,
the
what is the
Cheese
Cheese?
is okay, so it's like an engineering clubhouse at UBC. Pretty much peak nerd.
Yeah.
And yeah, I like everybody hung out there and drank beer. It was like I remember actually the first day of university, and we had like an orientation day, and they brought us to the Cheese, and they had the back of pickup trucks like full of ice and beer.
Wow.
And I was like,
What was the
okay.
beer?
Okay, here we
I'm
go.
pretty sure it was nothing. I think I don't know. I think my taste profile at that time was like Sleeman's Honey Brown.
Cool.
So I would have been
edge at the point.
Yeah. I was like, oh, the clear bottle.
Yeah.
I wasn't 19 either. They didn't seem to care about that. But yeah, so that was my first day of school, and I was like, oh my God, is this what university is about? This is pretty awesome.
This is great.
Yeah, so the Cheese is the engineering clubhouse. But it's funny you should mention that because I was just at UBC the last 2 days for the first time in pretty much really since I graduated in 2004.
Yeah.
Because I just don't happen to get to that side of town very much.
Yeah, it's a whole nother world.
But my daughter is at like a swimming camp there.
Oh.
She's a competitive swimmer, so she's there, and I was like, I did the tour. I looked at all the beautiful new engineering campus buildings, and I was like looking for the Cheese. I actually don't know if it's still there.
I saw a UBC article that they renovated it, or were in the process of rebuilt it basically. Yeah,
I will say it was pretty nasty.
Yeah. So is it the two Molson breweries, and then after that were you straight to Steamworks?
I was straight to Steamworks, yeah. So I was at Molson. I was only in Montreal for a year because it was always meant to be like a return trip.
Yeah.
And then I came back to Vancouver. I was actually supposed to be the head brewer for, I don't know if you remember, it was Rogers Arena, formerly GM Place, had Rickard's Brewery in it.
Oh.
It had like a 10-hectare brew house. Similar to the Air Canada Centre, or I don't even know if it's called the Air Canada Centre, like Toronto Maple Leafs where they play. Molson had a brewery there as well.
Wow.
And I was supposed to come back to Vancouver and be the brewer for that brewery, which was like kind of the dream job, actually.
That's kind of perfect,
because I had been working in Montreal, in particular, working in like more production, like actually the packaging lines and supervising and stuff. And so I really wanted to come back to Vancouver because I'm from here, and I also just really wanted that job. But in the year that I was in Montreal, they decided to close that little brewery.
Darn.
Due to, like profitability, blah, blah, blah. So I came back to Vancouver and actually ended up working in production for 2 or 3 more years on like the packaging side and working on like production line efficiencies and stuff like that. Kind of like
Oh wow.
I was essentially waiting for someone to retire in the brewing department.
Right.
Like I had done my IBD and all that in the first couple of years I was there, and I was just kind of like biding my time until one of the senior brewers retired, which did finally happen, and then I moved like into a brewing role.
Yeah.
For a team like that, do they have like, is it like 20 brewers, or is it like 30?
No,
like, or like a pretty small team because it's just like so automated?
Actually, it's the brewing. It's very segmented by department. So you don't think about it as like brewing and cellaring the way we would in our breweries.
Right.
There's brewing, and then there's like a fermentation department. And so basically they handle everything from like the work cooler yeast pitching. Like the brewer is not pitching the yeast, the fermentation department's pitching the yeast, and that's like a different set of guys on like a different floor of the brewery.
Okay.
And it's like they phone up and be like, okay, we're knocking out this brew now, like it's coming.
Yes. Coming.
Get
ready for it.
Yeah. And then there's the filtration department, which is basically handling everything from conditioning tank or through to filtration to bright tank, like right up till I guess getting it in spec in the bright tank.
Right.
So it's like very sort of siloed in that way.
Mm-hmm.
So of the brewers, there was basically just like a day shift, an afternoon shift, and a night brewer, just like we would have in our breweries, and like maybe like one relief brewer that would. I think we had like 2 on day shifts because there was more like weighing out of like specialty malts and like tasks like that were done on day shift. But yeah, small team of brewing, and then fermentation department was like 3 guys on each shift, so 9 people. And then filtration was kind of similar, 3 to 4 people on each shift, and like running 24/5 pretty much the whole year, and then 24/7 like in the summer.
Crazy.
Wow. So pretty tight crew though, considering.
Yeah.
I mean, there is a lot of automation. There had to be.
Yeah.
Like we had 2 kettles, so like there's like so much happening at once that it has to be kind of automated.
Yeah.
How does your experience at like all 3 of those breweries then, what have you been able to take away from that and apply to Steamworks?
So obviously consistency is king when you're coming from the Molsons of the world. Like Molson Canadian has to taste like Molson Canadian every time.
Yeah.
So it's really like spec driven. So that's, I think, like carrying that through into, the size of brewery that Steamworks is when I started, which is still like 50 hex system, but we were making about 8 to 10,000 hex, I think, the first year I started, which is like 50 hex brews, whereas a brew at Molson was like 600 hex. So just like driving that consistency into like our processes, not necessarily like how I like think about making a recipe or something, but like knowing that I got to make it again and again and again potentially. And having like almost like the team and the infrastructure in place to like make sure that happens, from like having a lab, having the lab equipment, having like someone tracking all the data. Like initially I was tracking all the data, and now we've kind of expanded. So like the team is kind of built out, and I'm fortunate enough to have like, I think that's the best part is of the growth of a place like Steamworks is like, it has been about consistently growing a team to bring in different skills and like, just like make it all happen. Because
if you have all those data points and you're not referencing them, then
yeah. And it's like, Aslan, our QC manager Dan, and he's like a rock star. So yeah.
It's a wealth of information and gives I imagine it gives you a lot of confidence in your process and stuff to be able to continue to do craft beer where you're taking more risks on scale. Yeah.
I'm glad we have a really good micro program, probably more than anything else.
Yeah.
Because that's like the scariest thing, because you can't see that until
Until it's already out in Penticton.
Yeah. Until and then you're toast, right? So
Yeah.
So I think, Molson obviously is just like that culture of consistency and also I guess like efficiency.
Yeah.
But maybe for me that was like taken to the nth degree, like to the point where it wasn't fun. hence why I kind of wanted to move on, and like there were those opportunities that existed in the BC craft beer scene by the time, like by 2014, 2015, like things were kind of booming. Yeah.
With scaling your recipes and stuff like that, how do you approach those things? Because you have the brew pub, you've got the little pilot system that you run.
Yeah. So we've got like essentially like a 80-liter pilot kit, homebrew kind of style. We have our brew pub, which is about 12 hex. So it's a pretty good size, but it's a really good test market because you're not trying to package anything, and you're like, we can do a lot more kind of like risky, weird things on there. I mean, as Aslan knows, having worked on that system.
Yeah. Got its quirks, but
I don't know that we necessarily used it as a pilot kind of site. As much as we could have.
Do you find you're usually just trialing ingredients and then applying that to your 50 hectares?
I feel like more and more we're using the brew pub as a pilot system. It's pretty engaging for our brewing staff too, to just be able to, like, we're kind of brewing down there at this point about once a week, give or take. Definitely like in the summer that's going to drop off because we're just staffing from the production brewery. So I would say more and more we're using it as like a testing ground. So like the beer that I'm drinking right now, we had planned to test down there, and it's sort of the whole process of, dealing with the LDB came around really fast, and suddenly we had a listing and we didn't even have time. So scaling can be interesting. Like sometimes you like have the best laid plans, you do a 20-liter batch, then you're like, okay, let's do it at the brew pub, let's see what happens, let's try some different ingredients. Then if that goes well, you're like, okay, let's do it at the brewery. And then there are other times where you're like, oh, can I swear? Oh shit.
But yeah.
We just gotta like go with this. And like this beer is a beer that we talked about for a really long time, and like had plans, or like we were gonna try using a lot of different like advanced hop products and extracts and see what we could get out of them to try and make kind of a little bit more of an old school IPA.
Nice.
And so we had basically, I think the next week before we actually found out that we had to produce it in Burnaby, we had a pilot planned at the brew pub, and we just never ended up being able to do it. So we were just like, okay,
went straight
let's go for it.
I mean, when you've brewed on that system for so long and you're using products you've used in other applications, I imagine. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're using the YCH 702 aroma extract in this, which we had not used before.
Yeah.
So that was a bit of a risk. And I think like all the little tweaks we've made on successive batches of this beer have been about how we use that 702. Like the first batch, I don't know if have you ever used that?
Yeah, so we use 702 in some of our core products. We use it on Whirlpool, but is that how you guys are using it?
Well, Brett, our R&D manager, we started out using it at Whirlpool. We found it to be I don't know if most of the aroma was like literally coming out of the brew house and into the brewery.
It's pretty potent, yeah.
I don't know how to describe it other than it feels like you could like chew the air.
Yeah.
Like it's very resinous, like heavy, aromatic, and like, I don't know, I feel like I could chew it. So Brett did some research. Brett Jameson, our R&D manager, who's also amazing, did some research, and now we're going with more of like a hop dip technique. So we're putting the 702 in the fermenter, casting out a little bit warm, have like a short hold there, and then cast out the rest. And that seems to retain, like, it was really surprising getting through to finished product, like the finished beer with that. It was like quite a lot more impactful.
And then are you still cropping off of that product then, or?
Yeah, we are.
Nice. So it's not affecting your
It's not impacting like our yeast
Right.
viability.
generations or
Yeah.
cycles or anything.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah. So with John Oliver, what inspired you to do? You said IPA is kind of focused around like OG clear West Coast IPAs.
I mean, obviously, Steamworks has leaned into the hazy IPA trend pretty hard.
Yeah.
And we've come out with some other hazy IPAs and double IPAs, and we were kind of like, as brewers, I think a little bit tired of them, and ready for going back to I don't know, just the old school IPA. Like I remember being down at UC Davis, and we were at a beer festival there, and we were pouring, and like basically every beer there was just like the 100 IBU, like
crystal clear, crystal malt, also. Those types of IPAs. So I couldn't quite wrap my head around the crystal malt in an IPA anymore. Like I just don't really enjoy that. I don't like how those age either. So this beer does not have crystal malt in it, but it is a little bit like more dark, and it is, I don't know if you can see.
It's got a nice color to it. It's not like
it is pretty
light.
crystal clear, and it's like pretty it's not like, as we've worked on, I was just telling Aslan, we've been working on using this YCH 702 portable aroma extract, and different ways to use it, like from Whirlpool, getting into more of a hop dip technique in the fermenter.
Yeah.
And it's just giving us a little bit more aroma, but like, I don't even know if the aroma quite prepares you for like the first attack of bitterness.
Yeah, but it's nice because there's a nice, like, it's that hot side flavor. And like that bitterness,
but it's like it's quite strong, but it's like really kind of like clean, and the beer is dry enough, I think, that you kind of like are left wanting to take another sip. Exactly. So it's weirdly drinkable, and it's like I said, we've done, I guess, 6 batches of it now, and each one we've tweaked like a small thing, whether it's how we use the extract. We were trying some TNS hop burst products as like a dry hop product as well, but didn't really love that. So I can't remember which batch that was on and which ones you guys are drinking, but I think that's the fun thing, that, like, going back to the earlier question about scale up, though, that's fun thing about maybe we're like, as much as we drive for consistency, or like that's kind of ingrained in like my ethos, I guess. What I do enjoy about the world of craft brewing is that, like, there's a certain level of forgiveness to like refine a brand or product that's already on shelves. You're not like, okay, I made this John Oliver IPA, I kind of want to change it, but we've already launched it, and it's no big deal if we like, I think from a
tweak it for the better.
Like, I think the whole idea of the beer hasn't changed, but like how we're making it has slightly changed.
That's something I really appreciate from working with you, is the idea of creating that true to brand identity, and then how you get to that point is not.
It takes a minute for the brand to be true.
Well, that's it too. Like, you launch it, and then you have some time, especially when it's fresh, to make like it's like you have more of a bandwidth to like make bigger changes, and then those more becomes a core brand. Like, then you get those regulars at the bar that are like, oh, this one's different, and you're like, you gotta
do it. Like, if you can make it all happen in the first like 6 months. Although sometimes I don't know if I have like beef with our sales department, because they'll be like, okay, we want 100 hectoliters this week, and we want 100 hectoliters the next week. I'm like, I can't. It's too soon.
Can you just space it out a little bit?
Like, I need, like, even if I can taste it closer to being done, we can figure out. Otherwise, we have maybe 200 hex of something that, you know, we still feel like we want to work on. So
yeah, you're like kind of going into it blind. Whereas like if you have one iteration out, you're like, okay, I have one data point at least to pull from for the next batch. Yeah.
But yeah, from a sensory and like just like trying the beers, it's been this beer, despite being very simple, it's been kind of fun to like keep iterating and making small changes and actually having those changes thus far all be like improvements on the previous. So
yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So is it 702 primarily in like the hot side and then T90's cold side?
We are doing 702, or I guess we're using bittering extract in this one too, which we do a lot of T90 bittering mostly still in all of our beers, but we wanted to try. We have a few beers now, like especially the bigger ones that we're just trying to like economize our losses in Whirlpool. So we've been using bittering extract with really good results, and then 702. Hop dip, and we were, like I said, we were using TNS hop burst as like a dry hop product, but we actually found with the hop dip with the 702 there was enough hop aroma there that it's kind of just so we this beer is not dry hopped.
Oh, cool.
Oh, so it's all kind of like initially hopped in a way.
Like, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Nice. And then what are you guys using for color on this in order to bring it out while limiting the caramel?
It's just got a little bit of Munich malt in it, actually.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah,
that's great.
And like our base malt has a pretty solid baseline of color, I think.
Oh, okay.
Like our two row malt that we use.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. So outside of beer, you have 3 kids.
Yeah.
They seem like a busy bunch. How do you manage to fit in all the swim meets, birthday parties, and with Darren and his wife Mel expecting their third in a month? Any tips?
Yeah.
Oh my God. No. Do I have any tips? Well, I will say that 2 things. I guess I'm really lucky in the sense that I have my husband who is an amazing dad and partner. So like, that makes it, when it's hard, it makes it possible.
Yeah.
And then also we have grandparents that are extremely helpful. So that's really good too. So hopefully you have some of those things or all of those things, Darren. Hopefully you have some family to help you out. We also have $10 a day childcare, which is also extremely helpful. I think it's probably why we decided to have a third kid, because we just got both of our daughters instead of costing like, a small mortgage to have them looked after when we were working. It was like $200 each per month. So yeah, but I don't know. Keep your beer fridge stocked is maybe my hot tip, because when your kids are like crying because you don't want to let them like gravely injure themselves, it's helpful to have a beer.
Yeah. And with BC beer, what excites you about where BC craft beer is at now? And do you have any thoughts on like what we can do to improve and continue to excel?
I think what excites me like personally is probably actually seeing lots of people that I've worked with over the years, like either being a head brewer at a brewery or owning a brewery. And I think that's like, I mean, you're one of them, Aslan.
Right.
I think that's like something that's really cool to watch, is like the advancement of like brewers in the industry, and then new people like coming up and joining the industry.
Yeah. I mean, you personally are somebody who's trained a lot of people. Got a long reach.
I feel pretty good about that too. That's like, if nothing else, I'm like, head brewer here, head brewer there. Like if they came from Steamworks, and like I think of all reasons that people could move on to different roles, those are like the very best reasons, and it makes me so happy. So
Yeah.
I think that's a super exciting thing about the industry. And what was the other question? How do I think we can improve?
Yeah.
I think there's probably like a lot of ways to answer that question.
Doesn't need to be super concise.
Yeah, I think that there is like some difficulty facing the industry right now, just like economically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's hitting all brewers in different ways, and like obviously we want as many breweries to thrive as possible. So I think I guess it's like as brewers and as companies, as businesses, figuring out how to like kind of toe the line between like still making like a premium product, but having it be accessible to people that are not like. I think craft beer can become like a luxury item,
Totally.
or has become a luxury item for a lot of people. So, like for the health of our businesses, but also to make sure that people are still getting really good craft beer in their mouths, we kind of have to toe the line between making something that makes business sense to make, but also still kind of like maintaining the quality we want.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I don't know if you can hear whatever is happening upstairs.
No, that echo cancellation's doing its job.
Okay, good.
I do think with a lot of advanced products and stuff, it seems like it's and you and I, Julia, have talked about it before about how it's used to kind of be a dirty word in craft beer.
Yeah, 100%.
And now it's almost trending.
Yeah. It's not something I would have wanted to talk about all that much, like even 5 years ago. And I know we talked about it a little bit at the BC Craft Beer Con, like a couple years ago, Aslan. But I feel like that was just like the gateway. But I think there's like a lot of good economic reasons to try using some of these different products, but also there's so many other reasons that kind of like have come to light of why they're a benefit. Like first of all, they're just doing a way better job of making products that actually work for brewers.
Totally, yeah. And the processing has gotten a lot better too.
But then, yeah, and then also just like transport, storage, like all these sort of like practical, less, I don't know, less exciting reasons, I guess. But
yeah, I mean, it's much easier to ship a 275 ml bottle of hop extract from New Zealand than 5 kilograms.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know about the carbon footprint of what goes into making the hops extract enough to say that it's actually better, but it certainly from a transport point of view, it seems better, and like refrigeration and everything like that. So yeah, and then hopefully we're losing less of our product, like less of the beer, like with mixed in with the hop, like spent hops and stuff like that. So
yeah, and
there's a lot of kind of like small wins.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what scale you're at too. That's all helps the bottom line.
Yeah.
Yeah. Steamworks was founded in 95. Do you have any big plans for 30 years?
Well, so our 25 year was 2020, and we did have some big plans in 2020, but like that stupid thing called COVID happened.
Yeah.
So we had planned to launch kind of like some legacy beers in package that year. Like Chuckanut Brown Ale, like a few of like Conrad's OG recipes. We had them all lined up, and COVID just kind of like obviously threw a wrench in lots of things, but that was one of them. So no plans on the horizon yet, but I'm like, okay, 30's the new 25.
Yeah.
Like, let's plan something. We did do a 21st anniversary steam beer that year in 2020, which was really good because it was actually brewed before before things like really locked down. But so I'd like to brew that again. But I think probably more to come on that. Hopefully we can do something.
That must be fun to look through like that many archives and kind of just like look at
Oh,
something, see how you can
it's
tweak
crazy.
it.
And like stuff that's Conrad's too. You're like, oh my gosh, like I have a lot of reverence for Conrad and everything he's done at Brass Neck. But yeah, there's a lot in the Steamworks vault that comes from him too. So
That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Aside from basically just coming to work at Steamworks, what's any words of wisdom for those just getting into the industry?
Oh my God. I feel like you have to feel wise before you can impart words of wisdom. And I feel like any wisdom I have is like, mostly based on like hard lessons and screw ups probably. But
Roll with the punches.
yeah, I think plan to fail sometimes, I guess. I don't know. Stuff's going to go wrong. At the end of the day, when something really what you think as or perceive as like something serious or bad or like that happens at the end of the day, I'm like, okay, we're just making beer. Like it's not life and limb. It's not like we can figure this out.
Fair. Yeah.
So I feel like approaching problems that way is I guess maybe my words of wisdom is like just take a step back and it's only beer and it's solvable.
Yeah, I feel like there's always ways to, reassess the situation. It might not be a complete doomsday situation on one screw up or, and then
even if it might feel like that on a given day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about outside of beer? What takes up your time?
Well, outside of my kids, I guess. Obviously I'm very busy with that and like if we've become more and more busy with it and I'm sure that trajectory is going to continue for a few more years. And then after that, I don't know, I'll probably get like a dog when my kids start to leave home. But I like our family likes skiing and we recently, or I guess not that recently, in 2021 we moved to North Van.
Oh, sweet.
From East Van, which has been awesome, just being so close to the mountains. Like Mount Seymour is right in our backyard, so we've had this year has been crap, but we've had season passes for
is Seymour your go-to
every year? Yeah, 100%. It's like it's right there for us, and it's very like inexpensive. Like it's half the price of going to Cyprus.
And, totally. Yeah.
And
the parking lot culture is
on point. I remember you telling me that. And yeah, it's just kind of accessible and kind of a bit of a no fuss mountain. Great for our kids to learn on. I'm a total like fair weather skier too. So like my kids are now way faster than me, even the 5-year-old. So I'm just like the old mom on the slopes, but that's fun.
That's great. It's just so nice to get out.
Yeah. I mean, other than that, my hobbies tend to revolve around like food, cooking, baking, drinking.
Yeah. What's the food hobbies?
Oh, well, I used to eat a lot of meat and I've gone a lot more vegetarian in these past few years. Mostly due to like climate change, I guess, consideration.
Yeah.
But also just like it's good to eat vegetables. Yeah. I feel better about myself when I eat a lot of vegetables. So I've really been learning how to cook as a vegetarian. I'm not a vegetarian, but I feel like that's a really different skill set. Like how to make tofu taste good, how to make my kids like tofu. It's not easy, and so
you gotta
that's
freeze the tofu first.
Oh, there you go.
I didn't even know that.
More soy sauce would have been my answer. Yeah.
And a lot of soy sauce. Yeah.
Also a good tip. But yeah, I like in terms of like what I have a cookbook. Probably obsession. I own way too many cookbooks. I started using the library, so
I've got like so many cookbooks that it's like I've literally gone through one recipe in each of these.
Worth it.
Yeah, I have a few that I've been like burning through like every recipe, and they're good. Like
nice.
Hetty McKinnon is an author that she's a Australian. I think she's half Korean Australian, and so all of her dishes have a lot of Korean and Asian influence. but she's vegetarian, and man, she makes like, I'm like, this is gonna be gross. What is like, and I make it, and everyone at the table is like, whoa, this is good. I'm like, I can't believe it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really enjoy cooking, and I used to do a lot more baking than I do now, but mostly just because like if I bake, I just want to eat it, and I don't have like a good like, what's the word, restraint.
Yeah, that's great.
Hard to balance all the carbs when beer is part of your daily
Yeah,
life.
yeah.
Like
100%. So
between the sourdough my partner makes and the beer, and, or like a very carb heavy household.
Yeah. I was on the sourdough train for a little bit, but I think, I actually did the Flourist course. I'm like, did I predict the pandemic? Because I did it
pre-pandemic
in like January of 2020
or
January of 2020, I think it was. And I was still on maternity leave, so I had time for like such pursuits as sourdough, because I was home. I was home a lot, so I could like turn the dough and stuff. And I feel like I did a little bit as COVID started because everybody was doing it. But then, I still have all the, Dutch oven and all the stuff, but now I'm like, okay, we buy bread.
It definitely makes you appreciate the $15 loaf.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Yeah. It's definitely a time consuming hobby, or like just bread making in general is.
It's funny, as brewers we say it's time consuming.
True.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of brewing is like passive work, though. I mean, I guess a lot of sourdough making is passive work, but I don't know.
Yeah. So highest standing IBD score.
Wow.
Where did you find that?
That's on your LinkedIn.
Oh shit. Okay. I'm not looking for a new job. Wow. I haven't updated my LinkedIn in 10 years.
Wow.
Is that so? We don't know if that's still standing then.
Well, no, it was that year. Yeah, the year that I wrote the IBDs.
Yeah.
Wow.
I got the highest mark on one of the material, like the first module.
Nice.
And so I got to go to a conference called Brau Beviale. I think it's how you pronounce it. It's in Nuremberg. It's like a big beer and beverage conference that's in Germany, like in Bavaria. So I got to go there and receive, like, it was I think it was £500 scholarship.
Wow.
Because in British pounds. So it was like pretty great. But the greatest part was that I got to go
to Nuremberg,
to Germany to go get it. So that was really cool.
Get some gravity cask Hellas and
yeah. It was wild, actually, because that would have been 2006, I guess. And the way they have the conference set up, it's like all the big booths have like restaurants at them.
Wow.
You can go and have lunch or have like a cappuccino or a beer, but everybody was smoking.
Europe.
Which is like
very European.
Even in Canada, in Canada at that time, it was already like smoking was done.
Wow.
In public spaces. So it was like really bizarre.
That's like my partner's from Rotterdam, and she was over there, and she's always just like, we're sitting at a cafe and there's kids at the other table. We're like, well, she's asking her mom because she's been in Vancouver forever. She's like, is it okay to have a cigarette? And she's like, well, yeah, they're old enough. They can get up and leave.
Right.
Oh my gosh. Different culture for sure. So that was in 2006. And then I went back to Brau Beviale again in 2016, because actually Steamworks was selling some beer in Europe at that time, and like we were shipping beer to Europe, Germany specifically, and so we were doing kind of like a bit of a sales tour to like little craft beer shops in Germany, which was crazy because they sell by like a single bottle on a shelf, like no packs, nothing, and no cans. I think cans are still kind of like not the popular format.
Yeah.
Although I think they're growing as they have here. But yeah, we went to Brow then, and still they had all the restaurants, but no smoking. Yeah.
You've
That's
probably
great.
been on lots of trips for beer, like something like that. What have you brought back, or what have you learned on something like that that's made you approach beer differently?
Oh man, that's a tough question. I mean, I think my first craft brewers conference was probably the most memorable of all of them I've been to, because I feel like it was. I think the European conferences were just like very European, like big equipment,
Right.
and like kind of like macro brewery focused. Whereas CBC is obviously geared to the craft brewer. And so just going and like, I don't know, I think it was at CBC in Washington, D.C., and I saw a presentation done by Tom Shellhammer
Oh yeah.
from Oregon State University on like, I think it was on hop creep, and it was like, I don't even know or at least I didn't know hop creep had a name.
I was there too, actually, for that one, and it was like the first. It was them and the guys from Allagash, and Allagash were like, basically they discovered hop creep essentially because they were like dry hopping.
Were they even calling it?
I don't think it had.
Hop creep
I don't think
then, or were we just calling it like post dry hop fermentation?
Yeah.
I think
that's probably what it was called. But they were noticing that they would have this like creep in the bottle.
We were noticing it, and we were noticing like diacetyl production. And so we started to do post dry hop diacetyl checks and stuff like. So I guess that's something that I brought back, because we were seeing it, but we were like confused by it actually, or just like we were like, what the hell is happening? Like, is this an infection? Like, and it seemed to be, well, it's definitely seems to be like varietal specific for us, and but just like the nerdiness of Shellhammer, and like I was just like, oh my god, this is awesome.
Yeah, I specifically remember that one because also like one of the question, like the first question, they're like, hey, anyone have questions? And the first person to get up was Garrett Oliver from Brooklyn Brewery, and he's like, oh, we've seen something like this, and I'm like, this guy like knows so much about beer, and yet he's like asking questions. I'm like
mystified.
I'm like, that is so cool. Like someone like that would just go up there.
Yeah. Well, I think it is pretty cool that like how much we don't know.
For sure. Yeah.
Or don't understand. Because I think then there's like this whole world of like new things that we have yet to understand that kind of makes the job interesting and like never a dull moment. So
for sure. Yeah, and I think probably your like scientific side of you is interested, I would assume, in that kind of stuff as well. Like that's what interests me, is all these new products as well, if they can actually work well and perform well. Like I find they're very interesting.
Yeah.
All these new yeasts and I don't know, thiols and everything. Like it's like, oh, this was there the whole time. We just didn't measure it essentially.
We had no idea. Or we didn't know why this was having. We just knew this smelled good or tasted good, but we didn't know why. It's super interesting, and I enjoy doing like going to all the seminars when I do have the opportunity to go to like a CBC or something like that, just because I just love all the data and like I don't know, I'm a major spreadsheet nerd too, so
yeah.
Well, that probably helps you actually retain all that knowledge and compile it.
Well, at least if I can't retain it, it's in a spreadsheet somewhere.
I can reference it if I need
somewhere to reference.
Yeah. I love a good pivot table, so.
Whoa. I thought the IBD score was impressive.
I had a really good boss at Molson that was a major Excel nerd, and he, I think, taught me a lot about what I could do in Excel, and
Oh, that's invaluable.
So, yes, it's seriously probably more valuable than my engineering degree.
Yeah. There we go.
Cool.
Great. Well, I don't know. I think we've kind of covered all of our questions so far. Yeah.
Was there anything else you wanted to talk about, or I don't know? Any questions we missed?
I don't know. We talked about sourdough. Conferences.
If not,
I think one of the questions you were going to ask was like, what was your process of bringing new projects to market?
Oh yeah,
I think is kind of an interesting
Yeah,
one
totally.
because sometimes I think maybe you might have dropped off for a second when we were talking about this, but sometimes like it's totally prescribed and like we've tested everything and then we're like, okay, we're scaling up, and sometimes we're flying by the seat of our pants because we're like, oh shit, we got to make something, or like we have this idea, we need this beer for this idea. And usually I'm sure it's like this in your breweries where sometimes like you have beers that are driven by yourself or driven by the brewers, and it moves through the process that way. And then alternatively, you have like, maybe you have a sales team that are like, we're trying to get this draft account, or we have multiple draft accounts. They're asking for like
this
X,
such and such type of beer. And so it comes backwards that way.
They're shifting the summer menu 3 weeks early.
Yeah. So we definitely have beers that have gone in both directions. Like Flagship IPA was brewer driven. Right. Like I don't think our sales team realized we were making a hazy IPA until we packaged it. Which is probably for the best, because they might have been like, no, that we don't want to do this. It's risky. We're calling it Flagship IPA. It should be like a standard IPA. So we just didn't tell them. And that turned out okay. So, and then, so I would say like this product, like this beer, like these John Oliver beers. So we have the first iteration was John Oliver Lager, which was, I don't know if you know why we have the name John Oliver, first of all.
Yeah, go into it.
Right?
So that's so apparently the BC LDB did like a request to the wine industry, beer industry, to submit ideas for products for their 100th anniversary.
Wow.
Because Prohibition ended in BC in 1921, and in 2021, basically as soon as Prohibition ended, that's when BC government stores opened and started selling alcohol.
Gotcha.
So the BC Liquor Board wanted to celebrate this somehow. So they reached out to all the kind of beverage industries, alcohol beverage industries, and said like, submit your ideas. So we're like, okay, we'll make a lager. And John Oliver, other than being a famous late night talk show host currently, was the premier of BC in 1921 when Prohibition ended.
Oh yeah.
So that's why it's called John Oliver Lager, but it's a rice lager.
Yeah.
Because we needed to make something that was like differentiating from our kind of main lager lineup. And we were looking for something like crisp and drinkable. So like definitely now we've been making it since 2021, which is kind of hard to believe actually. It's been that long. I think it was the end of 2021. But it's basically one of the beers that's in like a lot of our brewers' fridges now, because it's just pretty easy drinking.
I must say it's one of my go-to utility beers.
You got to have a utility beer, right? Especially you, Darren. You're about to have a third kid. You need to have the utility beer.
I like that. Should come with a promotional belt on the utility belt. Utility beers. There you go. That idea is free.
So it's been quite successful. I like this idea. I like where you're going with it. I don't think our production folks would love it that much if we had to put those in the boxes, but so that then John Oliver IPA was kind of like the next iteration, and then we also have coming out canning next week John Oliver Pale Ale. So it's going to be part of a mix pack, but that so this is kind of an example of beers coming from like the sales end to the brewers being like, let's make this. And so we're like, okay, cool, let's make a rice lager. Okay, now we're going to make an IPA. Now we're going to make a pale ale. So it's coming out as a mix pack soon.
Cool.
And that's where I think the pale ale will only be in the mix pack. The IPA is in a 6-pack, and then the lager is in like a 6-pack and a 15-pack. But this is the best thing I found out today, what the mix pack is going to be called, though. It's called the Premier Pack.
Ah, very nice.
And I was like, oh my gosh, someone in our marketing team is actually
Yeah.
Brilliant. That's pretty
That's
funny.
good.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
official beer of CanCon.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Stephen Quinn will be all over
Oh,
it.
yeah. There you
Oh
go.
gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, our goal would be like for John Oliver, the talk show host, to have John
Yeah.
Oliver beer on the
Yeah.
show.
There you go.
Somehow.
There you
That
go.
would be
Gotta get
awesome.
it there somehow.
I don't know. I'm sure we have some tenacious sales and marketing folks. So
They'll be working on it.
yeah.
When
Good product
when
placement.
you were designing these recipes, were you like designing them in mind of like what the price point like you were kind of going for? Because they are like aggressively priced.
Yes. So they were, I mean, actually not so much with the lager, because that wasn't like the intention initially.
Sure.
Wasn't to have a full-time product. So, and I don't know if you're using flaked rice in any of your beers, but it's quite expensive. Actually, the stuff that we're using Breeze flaked rice. We've tried other brands of flaked rice and they suck for conversion. So
Yes. I was texting Aslan about
we've gone back
this week.
Yeah. Oh my God, it's such a pain. So we've settled on Breeze, which has worked really well, but it's like I think amongst the most expensive flaked rice that you can buy. So that not so much with the John Oliver lager. With the IPA, we were definitely considering basically how to minimize loss, and actually just it's kind of like a fun trial ground for all the kind of advanced products. Get something different for us to try, because we can make an IPA the normal way, but like another great aspect of using the less expensive extracts is like the clarity you get. It's like a crystal clear beer.
Do you notice that even going into the centrifuge at that point? Just like
so we can actually run it quite quickly through the centrifuge versus basically any of our other like traditionally dry hopped beers. We have to run at varying slower speeds to get the clarity we want, because our target is basically that, like outlet turbidity is kind of like what we're looking at when we're setting centrifuge speed. But in terms of designing the recipes, I would go back and say that I don't want to take credit for the recipes here, because certainly like one of the best parts of my job is the team that we have at Steamworks. And so like John Oliver Pale Ale, for example, is our lead brewer Matt's recipe.
Nice.
Oh, awesome.
I would say the lager was sort of like a collaborative, I don't even know. We were just spitballing ideas, and the recipe sort of spat itself out. And then the IPA was kind of like along the similar lines of like, okay, what different things are on the market. So like Brett, our R&D manager, was kind of instrumental in that. But I think all of our beers are kind of made that way. So
that's cool.
It's nice to kind of collaboratively work on a recipe and know each other well enough that you can recognize each other's strengths. And
for sure. I mean, these days, I think from a really creative perspective, I'm kind of like a step back sometimes, because there's lots of talented people that work for us that have really great recipe ideas, and I feel like I chime in when I feel like I need to, or I have something that I want to add. But I think that's kind of like how we operate and make beers at Steamworks. So
no wonder why you're able to put out such a wide variety.
Sometimes we end up with the coffee and donut stout. Imperial stout, which has no attention paid to cost whatsoever.
Sometimes you just gotta flex that muscle just to know you can still, right?
Like,
okay. No, we got that still.
Well, we've more or less decided it's a tradition to make some kind of wildly flavored imperial stout like every Christmas.
Nice.
So
There you
this
go.
year was coffee and donut. I think last year we did toasted coconut and s'mores.
Oh
The toasted coconut was so good.
yeah.
I don't really like smoked malt, so the s'mores one was
Meh.
less my jam. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds good.
Yeah. Smoke can be pretty intense.
Great.
Great. Which smoked malt did you use in the s'mores beer? Do you remember?
I usually use Wireman Beach Smoked, but I can't remember if we used that because I think we were looking for actually something more punchy.
Oh,
Yeah.
I don't remember.
I always
remember.
like look for something.
Brett's currently trying to convince me to put smoked malt in our lager,
Yeah.
and I can't. I can't.
I love me a smoky lager, but it's hard to like convert a big beer to that. That'd be hard.
Yeah.
I mean, there's got to be something for now that we can't have campfires, you know.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
You gotta have something to make your your hair smell like smoke.
Yeah.
I think there was something though
Or your beard smell like
about there's
Yeah.
another brewery that was using like 1% smoked malts in their lager to like give it this like weird like acidic thing to it.
I think that's the maybe the prevailing wisdom that Brett's been reading
okay.
about, like this really low percentage
Yeah.
of smoked malt in
Yeah.
lagers, just to like somehow carry them all. I
Yeah.
don't know. I mean,
I did 1.5%.
basically, we'll try it. We'll try anything
Yeah.
once. But I don't know about that one.
It does seem like risky.
Yeah.
You're like 1%. Doesn't seem like
Yeah.
a lot, but some
I
malt-
seems risky,
1.5
especially-
in a Scottish shilling, like just that we packaged last week, and it's present.
yeah.
Okay.
I know.
Okay. So
That was
you're
before.
scaring me.
Yeah.
Okay. You're
So,
scaring me. Yeah, especially because all of our lagers are very like mainstay beers. Like,
yeah.
I don't know. Maybe we do like I don't know. Maybe we'll do it at the brew pub.
Yeah.
The
See what happens.
The Wireman Oak Smoke wheat is like very mellow in comparison. That's
Yeah,
Okay.
that's true.
that's the thing.
Unless you do 100% Grodzitsky with it, then it's very much light, but yeah, it's still
Yeah.
pretty light.
Yeah.
Cool.
For me, whenever I taste smoked malt and like also in like Scotch or anything, it just reminds me of smoked salmon.
Yeah.
And it's like I don't want to feel like fishy in my beer.
Oh, but how
I don't know.
Cascadian.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Should have proposed
Yeah.
that to the LDB.
Yeah.
100-year anniversary smoked
Oh, man.
salmon lager. Ooh, delightful.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll get that on the 150th
Yeah,
or
yeah.
something.
Yeah.
If we're still
Still
going.
time for that.
Yeah.
All
Cool.
right.
Well,
Well,
yeah.
thank you so much for your time.
Oh yeah, thank you for inviting me. I'm honored to be the first guest.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was our episode with Julia Hanlon. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's great to have a chance to chat about the John Oliver IPA. It's out in LDBs. It's an LDB exclusive. That whole John Oliver series is incredibly well calculated, amazing beers. That was
Yeah,
Go
It was interesting to hear the process of how they were, coming up with those ideas and scaling up the recipes and coming up with something that was, good for that market and good for made dollars and cents for Steamworks as well.
Yeah, the use of that YCH 702 is cutting edge.
Yeah, very interesting, and keeping their losses low, which is sweet, and the beer tastes great, like very hop forward.
Yeah, it is definitely a benchmark for West Coast IPA.
Yeah. Sweet. Well, stay tuned, everyone, for future episodes of Why This Beer. We have some fun interviews planned with some more people in the industry. And yeah, we're excited to keep talking about beer in this coming year.
Yeah, until next time. Take
Yeah.
care.
Cheers.